So far we've covered the feline fatale and the bird of ill omen in this series, and now it's time to spotlight the king of conundrums, the Riddler. The Riddler is another villainous pop culture icon, a massively popular character who even has several theme park attractions themed after him. I mentioned that because I just found out about it. Sometimes I forget just how recognizable and mainstream these characters really are. Anyway, the Riddler has naturally been adapted by numerous forms of media, including movies, cartoons, games, and so on. Here is my list of my favorite such adaptations. Tell me yours in the comments. Number 5. Justice League Action. Eddie was voiced by Star Trek's Brent Spiner in this cartoon show. Sadly, the Riddler only appears in one single episode on the show, and that's why I rank him so low. He appears in the episode Enigma Consulting Detective, based on a Paul Dini Detective Comics run. In the episode, Eddie has reformed and is now a private detective, helping two heroes find and rescue Batman from the Joker's grasp. This version of the Riddler is basically perfect. He's smug, arrogant, obsessive, a genius, everything that the Riddler is supposed to be. Having reformed and essentially being a hero, not a villain, this Riddler is also very sympathetic. As I've mentioned endless times in the past, I generally prefer my Eddie being somewhat sympathetic. I don't feel he's a villain who's supposed to be pure evil, like the Joker and the Scarecrow. Spiner does a fabulous job in the role too. He pulls off that sophisticated smugness just perfectly. A must for any actor portraying the character. I really like the design as well, a very sleek and stylish Eddie, again just like he's supposed to be. Sure, they for some reason chose to make him bald, but you barely notice it anyway, as he never removes his hat in the entire episode. I of course only wish Eddie had appeared in more episodes. Maybe he will in the future, or maybe he won't. In fact, I'm not even sure they're still making the show. Number 4. The Batman. On this cartoon show, Eddie was voiced by horror icon Robert Englund, aka Freddy Krueger. A bit of an odd fit. You would naturally picture Freddy Krueger voicing the Scarecrow instead, which by the way he did end up doing in the video game Injustice 2 a decade later. Still, I think Freddy does a fine job as Eddie here as well, and surprisingly it does fit. Maybe not that surprisingly though, as the Batman's version of Riddler is a bit more sinister than usual. A darker take on the character, this one supplied him with a brand new and all different origin story too. It's a very tragic origin, where Eddie's career and life is ruined by a greedy businessman and a woman he loved. It's kind of funny, as you all know, I'm not the biggest fan of this show, yet here it is again, just like on the Catwoman list, and again on the number 4 spot. What can I say, the Batman did a great job with Catwoman and the Riddler. When it comes to the Riddler specifically, I feel the writing is in fact on par with Batman the Animated Series. His origin episode, The Riddler's Revenge, feels a lot like an episode of the animated series. Of course I do have to mention though that I hate the visual design. This weird Marilyn Manson-esque look, whatever you're supposed to call it. I've never liked it and I never will. With Catwoman it's really just the mouse ears I don't like, the rest of the costume is fine. But with Eddie, it all looks like crap. I don't know what they were thinking. I guess it's a real testament to the quality of the writing when I still place the Batman's Eddie as my number 4, despite the fact I hate the look so much. Number 3. The Animated Series. Speaking of the animated series, here it is. Naturally, Taz Eddie naps a spot on the list as well. John Glover voiced Eddie on this show, and he basically invented the modern Riddler personality. That smug and arrogant performance I say is such a must. It all began here, crafted by John Glover, and of course the writers of the show as well. I don't think enough props are given to the animated series for creating the modern Riddler. We always praise it for Mr. Freeze, the Mad Hatter, and naturally for inventing Harley Quinn, but we shouldn't forget what it did for Riddler. Before this show, Eddie was usually depicted as a cackling Looney Tune, a zany goofball in a silly jumpsuit. Don't get me wrong, I love the zany goofball in a silly jumpsuit, but I, and probably most fans, do prefer the modern version. The version this show gave us for the first time. On the animated series, Eddie is suave, calm, stylish, and charismatic. He's a nerd trying his best to be cool. Because he is a nerd, this show was also the first to portray him as a technological genius, not just a master at puzzles. In other words, a groundbreaking take on a character. With all this praise and my love for Taz in general, you might wonder why I'm only placing him on number 3. Why not number 1? Well, the thing is, while Taz Eddie was great and groundbreaking, he was also a bit uneven. The show's writers struggle with his MO and motivations. It's like they didn't really know what they wanted to do with him. It feels like they didn't quite find their Riddler until his final episode, Riddler's Reform. But by then it was a bit too late, of course. Yeah, the rocky road the Riddler took on the show is why I can't possibly rank him higher than number 3. Not if I want to be honest. Number 2, the 60s TV show. Here it is again, the 60s Batman TV show. So far it's the only piece of media that's appeared on all lists. Despite the goofy camp, this live-action TV show handled the rogues really well. And besides, the comics were really campy back in those days anyways. So on the show, the Riddler was played by Frank Gorshin for season 1 and 3, as well as in the spin-off movie, while John Astin filled in for one episode in season 2. Astin is fine in the role, but it is of course Frank Gorshin we're talking about here, and Gorshin alone who naps the number 2 spot on his list. Just like the show did with Penguin and Catwoman, it also stayed very true to the comics with the Riddler. He's an arrogant criminal genius obsessed with besting Batman in a battle of wits. As the show made clear on numerous occasions, for Riddler it's not necessarily about the score, it's about the game itself. The riddles are the reason he is a criminal, and with the Riddler that's obviously how it should be. Besides being faithful to the comics, this version also stands out due to Gorshin's performance. Like I said earlier, back in those days Eddie was depicted as a zany Looney Tune, and Gorshin is certainly that as well. He really amps up the over-the-top antics of the mad quizmaster. But for some reason Gorshin also decided to put his own spin on a character, portraying him with sudden mood swings. He'll be a hysterical hyena in 1 second, and then cold and serious the next. I'm glad he did this, as it makes the character a lot more interesting and more fun to watch. If he was over the top and zany all the time, I don't think I would have liked this Riddler that much. Due to this odd quirk of his, the Riddler felt a bit deadlier than the other villains, and during those serious cold moments of his, he could be downright creepy. At times, it almost felt like he stepped off the set of another completely different and darker show. He's one of few 60s rogues who truly seemed like he was insane. Of course, none of that is never made explicit on the show itself. All of this is really my interpretation of it. Others may not agree. Nevertheless, it is a very unique take on Riddler, yet at the same time, oddly enough, also a very faithful take on him. Ideally, that's really how all adaptations should be. And now for my favorite adaptation of the Riddler, and this wasn't easy. Number 1, the Arkham Games. Wally Wingert supplied a voice for Eddie in this series of video games. Riddler appeared in all of them, albeit only his voice for the first one. Yeah, I gotta say, I don't feel quite comfortable putting a video game on my number 1 spot. It doesn't feel right somehow, like it should be a movie or a cartoon. But I don't really have any other choice. I looked at all the different takes on Eddie across different media: 60s TV show, animated series, Batman Forever, Gotham, The Batman, and so on. I love Taz Eddie, but I already explained why I can't put that one higher. I also couldn't put Gorshin as high as number 1, because I do prefer the modern Riddler over the classic zany one. And I sure as hell wasn't going to put Marilyn Manson Eddie as my number 1. So really, that only left the Arkham Games. When I really think about it, outside the comics, the Arkham Games have simply given us the best Riddler. There's just no way around it. Again, this is a perfect Eddie enigma, incredibly smug and arrogant, and an absolute genius. Like the Batman's Riddler, this one is also a bit darker than usual, but I think he kinda had to be. Considering the tone of the games, a more light-hearted Riddler simply wouldn't have worked, at least not as a major villain. I have to say that Wally Wingert supplies the best voice work the character has ever received. It might be blasphemy to say so, but I think he even outshines John Glover himself, and that is certainly not small praise. Wingert's performance simply embodies everything that Eddie Enigma is, from his cocky arrogance when insulting you to his frustrated freakouts when he realizes he's about to get beaten. Another thing the Arkham Games did so well was incorporate the Riddler's gimmicks into a game. The riddles, the puzzles, the challenges, it was all done so well and went perfectly with the theme of the character. When you think about it, the Riddler is actually the Batman villain who's the best suited for video games. Yet no game has ever utilized that, except for this series. Sure, some say the Riddler parts are tedious and annoying, but they're kinda supposed to be. We're put in Batman's boots after all, and this is what it's like for him whenever he faces that smug jerk. You may like the Riddler as a character, but I can promise you, you would not like going up against him in real life. Finally, I also want to mention the visual designs he sported in the games. This is the way to do something different with Eddie's look. They aren't his usual get-ups, but they're still very much the Riddler, unlike the Marilyn Manson version. So there you have it, my top 5 favorite adaptations of the King of Conundrums. I'm not too happy about this list. I don't want to put the Arkham Games as my number 1, but yeah, there's nothing else I can really do. Anyway, don't forget to tell me your favorite Eddies in the comments. Next up in the series is the Duke of Duality himself, Harvey Dent aka Two-Face. Before that though, I think I want to make a couple of other videos, so stay tuned for all of that. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.